Yeah, we started off, let's just do a little recap on the whole thing and just catch up ourselves.
Right.
We started off with the, basically the concept, there's two mitzvahs here, the mitzvah of bringing the Omer and the mitzvah of counting the Omer. Right, bringing the Omer offering and counting the Omer. And what's the difference between them? We started talking about the difference between counting days and counting weeks. Right? And we also spoke about why the mitzvah of Sfiras Omer is called Mimacharas HaShabbos. Why is it called the day after Shabbos? These are sort of the leading questions. Right? So, are you guys with us here? Okay, so basically we started talking that, yeah, it's what? Okay, hold on a second. Yeah, I guess we'll just review the whole thing here. It's kind of, we did a lot. Alright, so going back inside, I guess. So basically we started talking that the difference, what's special about the Sfiras HaOmer and the mincha of the Omer, the offering of the Omer, is that the offering was made out of barley. Right? And the uniqueness of barley, which we see also by the Sota, is that it was animal food. Right? Why does the Sota have to bring barley? Because her deeds were animal deeds. So also, what's the connection therefore with the barley in the Omer offering? Because it's a special time to work on our animal soul, right? So the whole time we're offering, basically we're counting from the barley offering. So in this inyan, what's the unique work here with the animal soul? So basically we started saying that the inyan of Pesach, going out of Mitzrayim, was a revelation of God that was from above to below in a way that we're not vessels for the work, right? Meaning to say that the revelation that happened, we didn't do anything to earn it, right? And therefore, we couldn't really properly internalize it. The whole thing that took place there. And the whole Sfiras HaOmer, basically, the work of Sfiras HaOmer is to then prepare ourselves to receive that very revelation at the time of Shavuos, but in this capacity we'll be ready to handle it, because the whole 49 days is the work of fixing ourselves and becoming vessels to receive this light. By the time it comes back, it's going to be the same revelation, but in a completely different form, because we're going to be internalizing the revelation. And we said last time that itself makes it like a different revelation. The fact that this infinite revelation can suddenly be internalized means that ultimately it's a much higher revelation in its own right. So basically, the work. Okay.
The active Sfirat HaOmer is the preparation of the work to be done on the animal soul?
Exactly. So there's... Exactly. So we said that the whole process can be understood by use of a pasuk that said by Shlomo HaMelech, right? Which is what? Who remembers the pasuk? Mishacheni acharecha narutza haviyani hamelech chadarav. Which the pasuk goes, draw me, we will run after you, and the king will bring me to his room, to his palace, right? So we said that in here you could find, just in the words, very simply, the whole concept of what these 3 months represent, and sort of the uniqueness of each month. So the first one, Mishacheni, is draw me. The idea is that it's in the singular. And secondly, the word draw means that the activity is being done from the one who's drawing, not the one who's being drawn. Draw me basically is not that you're doing any work, but that something's happening to you. So this represents the inyan of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Going out of Egypt, you get drawn out because we didn't do any work, and also it's a singular. Why? Because nothing happened on the part of the animal soul. Right? The only one that was drawn was a singular, was the godly soul, because he's the only one that could experience this revelation, right? And basically, it's true that the godly soul, something like wondrous happened to it, and it felt revelation, but none of that revelation made any imprint in order to change and really affect the animal soul, which is the whole reason why we had to run away from Egypt, as is brought in Tanya in many places. After that, Ki barach ha'am, it says the people fled, right, from Egypt. Why do they have to flee? if they were sort of with Moshe Rabbeinu, they could do whatever they wanted at that point. Parah was trying to get them to go out. They were deciding, we're going to go out here, we're going to go out there. In other words, they weren't needing to seemingly be in a rush. So why do they in fact have to flee? It says in the Torah that the people fled when they left. Why do they have to flee? Because really they had to flee for their own selves. Their animal souls were still Egyptian, right? And they were still suspect to falling prey to all the Egyptian lowliness. In fact, as we know, if they would have stayed one more second, they would have fallen into the 50th level. They wouldn't have been able to be redeemed. So in other words, why? They just saw all the miracles and so forth, because the miracles didn't affect them. It affected their godly soul, but not their animal soul. It didn't make any change in them. They were the exact same person they were before, despite all the revelation. For the reason that we said that that they didn't have any vessels to receive it. So it was like basically screaming at a piece of stone. There was no. Yeah.
Was it the godly soul that gave the impetus to leave? Because if they didn't have that realization yet,
yeah, totally.
They didn't leave.
Totally the godly. Mishacheni is the word. It's draw me.
Okay.
Who's the me in that conversation? It's the godly soul. He's the only one that was drawn.
Draw me what?
He was the only one that was drawn. Drawn out. Like in
what's the sentence?
Mishacheni acharecha narutza. We didn't get to this part yet. We'll run after you. And then Haviyani Hamelech Chadarav. So yeah, it could be that the godly soul gets aroused. It could make your animal soul move. In other words, that's not meaning to say that it literally picked up the animal soul and took it out. But it doesn't mean that the animal soul was affected by that process.
With a flash.
Yeah, it wasn't affected. It was like sometimes a person has a tshuva event in their life, right? Which suddenly will get them like an intervention, basically. It doesn't, just because you have an intervention doesn't mean that you actually took anything in from that intervention and you're a different person. You could be the exact same person before.
Right.
The only difference is now you've been intervened, right? It's so something happened.
Intervened by
In this case,
Right.
yeah.
Still not a life
You know what an
defining
intervention
moment.
is? Like your whole family comes around and like tells you you're a crackhead, basically.
Still not
So
a
this is what
life-defining
happened. This is all the
moment.
angels and the Hashem and their. What's that?
I'm saying it's still not a life-defining moment.
It's a life-defining moment, but it might be one that comes and goes, right? No question, it's a big deal. But if it doesn't change you, it's a big deal that once was, right? Yeah.
If I had a pet dog and I told the dog to stay, I would be controlling it. I'd be talking to something outside of myself. But we have to take our godly soul and talk to our animal soul and basically discipline it. It's almost like we're schizophrenic, but it's appropriate because we are a godly soul that is trying to control an animal soul. Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay, so then the next line is Acharecha Narutza. Now we're getting into the point of the Maimon. Svartim Lechem, you shall count for yourselves 7 weeks. And this is the Indian of we will run after you is a we. And there's a running. Two new things. Before we had an I and a drawing. Now we have a we and a running. We will run after you. What's the Indian of we? Obviously the animal soul is now involved, right? And the reason is because you start counting and dealing with the actual details of the problem. In other words, not just a kind of like a intervention, it's now the work that's going to slowly take place after this intervention. And the idea of the running is an interesting chiddush over here. That the idea is that the animal soul is a runner in everything that it does. That's what makes it an animal soul. It's basically wild. But the truth is that usually it's running in a way that's away from godliness. So the whole idea now is that we are running, they're running together, right? Which means that because the animal soul is now participating, right, in the work of God, he makes even the godly soul into a runner. And that's what it means we are running. The chiddush is not the animal soul. There's two chiddushim, I guess you could say here. One is that the animal soul is now mentioned, right? But the real chiddush is that the animal soul now makes the godly soul into a runner. So when the idea is that we are running, is basically the chiddush is that the running is now associated with the godly soul, because the godly soul usually goes everything in a very orderly state, where if you run, you're going to be misorderly, right? Disorderly. So, but the chiddush here is that the work that's being done by the animal soul gives the godly soul an aliyah, right? That it wouldn't have otherwise. And it makes sort of like a new power, and it makes sense because the godly soul, he wants godliness to be on the earth. He doesn't really achieve his aim if he doesn't get his animal soul on board, right? Because it's basically he's just screaming at a stone all day. It might be that he's aroused, but he's not doing his job to arouse. So when he gets himself inside the animal soul, he also gets the powers that's associated with the animal soul. In other words, he basically gets the prize, which is that he now has a runner, right? And in this itself, we said there's something called counting weeks and counting days, right? And counting weeks and counting days, so we went into a little back and forth about this regarding the obligation from the Torah versus the obligation from the Rabbanim, right? Some people want to say that in the days of the Beis HaMikdash, for sure, everybody says the whole mitzvah of counting both days and weeks was from the Torah. And it was a deraisa obligation. You with me? And others want to say, okay, that's everybody. So some want to say that after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, still the obligation of counting weeks and days is from the Torah. And some want to say that counting weeks and days is strictly from the Rabbanan after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Right? It's all from the Rabbanan, which is actually the main opinion. But nonetheless, there is one opinion. Yeah.
And that's because, is there some event? We're going to bring an Omer to the Beis HaMikdash, and there's no Beis HaMikdash, so what are you doing?
That's exactly right. Okay. That's exactly right. The reason why it's only been the Rabbanan today is because it's counting the Omer. The Omer is not offered, so then there's no Omer to count. So therefore, what are we doing it for? We're just doing it to remember the Beis HaMikdash, not to forget. So it's rabbinic in origin. Comes Rabbeinu Yerucham. There's a posek who switches it up, and he says, no, the mitzvah, even after the Beis HaMikdash, to count the days is what? Midoraisa. It's still from the Torah. Only the mitzvah to count the weeks is midrabanan. Okay? Which means we still have a mitzvah to count weeks like we do. Today is whatever it is, 3 weeks and 6 days, right?
7.
No.
Really?
7 days is already
A week.
Yeah.
By definition, I can't.
But as I read...
Every day you count the days. Today's 27 days of the Omer, and that is 3 weeks
4
and
weeks
6
and 6 days.
4 weeks.
Okay, right. So yesterday I said it.
No, it's 3 weeks. No?
3 weeks. Not
Yeah.
4. 3.
Wait, today is
It's
27.
7.
Which are 3 weeks and 6 days.
Right. Yeah. Yesterday I said.
Okay, it says week 4, but it's
Right, because we're in the 4th week, but we didn't
Yesterday
finish
I
it yet.
said 7 days and 20.
You can't say 7 days. Well, it doesn't make sense.
Didn't I say
No, it's 7
7
days.
days and 20 days, something like that?
Okay, but that's fine.
That's how I started,
That's
right?
just the way you say 27.
Okay. So that
Okay. The point is that you count the weeks, right? You say these are 3 weeks, etc. So you see that we actually count the days and the weeks. What's the story with that? So according to I think the Alter Rebbe basically is the main thing is all min Rabbanim. But we're trying to get into the guy's head, Rabbeinu Yerucham. Why does he say that today there's a difference between whether you're counting the weeks is rabbinic origin and the days is from Torah origin still today, according to him. So why would there be such a distinction? So he said basically the whole idea of counting weeks and days is that the counting of the days is getting into the minuscule details of everything. And since that is really the way that you uplift the Nefesh Bahamas. There's no general way to uplift the Nefesh Bahamas, right? Because what happens if you generally uplift something means you don't really uplift it in all of its details, right? If something is sort of just, it's like you skip steps, then you might get to the next level, but you didn't really get there yet, right? So the idea is that since the whole purpose of the counting of the Omer is to get down into the nitty-gritty of everything that's wrong with the Nefesh Bahamas, right? Yeah. Therefore, there's an opinion, and it makes sense, that even in the time of Galus, it's a mitzvah deraisa to count the days, because the days represents each and every midah, chesed shebechesed, gevurah shebechesed, tiferah shebechesed, and basically, since the whole purpose is to uplift it and actually have it change on a very core level, so then the idea of coming midoraisa means that it's still a Torah obligation. What's the meaning behind that? Is that we still are empowered from Moshe Rabbeinu, in other words, from the Torah, from God Almighty, not, so to speak, only the Rabbanim, right? But we're still empowered by Hashem to do this work, because this work is relevant at all times. You know, you have to always do the detailed work. What's there for the week count represent? That is sort of a more global, general uplifting. And the idea is that nowadays we don't have the power to do that type of uplifting. In other words, we can only work in the details. There's a concept that you can sort of, once you get all the details, right? Think of it like, for example, like an idea, right? You know, it's kind of a wild thing to say, but in theory, everything the Rebbe is telling us, from his perspective, we see it as a Maimer on Shavuos, a Maimer on Sfiras Omer, a Maimer on, Yud Beis Tammuz. Each Maimer is its own work of art that stands alone. And you have to basically understand the ideas therein. But really, from the Rebbe's perspective, the whole Chassidus is one idea. That he wants us to basically understand what he understands. The only way to give that over to a person, though, as far as work, from our perspective, is to give us a little piece at a time. First you understand this, then you understand this, then you understand this, and then after a long time, who knows what the idea is? I haven't gotten there yet, right? But it's basically like Rebbe, to see reality as the Rebbe sees reality. That's the one-liner, right? Mm-hmm. He's trying to teach us, so we'll be like him one day. Meanwhile, we didn't get there. But the only way to do that is to work with the details. You start with step 1, step 2, step 3. After you have all the steps, you won't just have all the parts. You'll have the whole, which is a sum of all the parts. And that power we don't have in Zman HaGalus. In other words, until Mashiach comes, we're not going to see really the work of our hands completed. And sort of understand exactly what it was that we had. So in other words, we only have pieces of the idea. We don't necessarily have the whole idea. How's it going?
Go back.
Thanks. We don't really have the whole idea, manifested. So this is the idea of counting weeks. That we don't have the power to do that midoraisa at this time. We can do midorabanan. In other words, there's a sort of we still do it as a remembrance for the Beis Hamikdash. That there is such a concept that you can have the realization and the manifestation of the whole midah. But in the meantime, we don't have such a koach. And it's not really necessary to uplift the Nefesh Bahamas. In other words, at least to get to all of its pratim and all of its details, okay, the reward of basically really seeing the true uplift that's going to happen when you've accomplished it, getting down to all details, it would be nice, but it's not essential to actually lift up the being. You with me on that? Yeah? Okay, so that's the idea of counting days and weeks. Now, we went on to explain the actual details of at least one sphera from the standpoint of the Nefesh HaElokis. Meanwhile, what does it mean, these klalus of the midas? What does it mean to go into details? What is Chesed Sheba Chesed? What is Gevurah Sheba Chesed? In other words, if we're doing this job...
What do those mean?
Exactly.
What do they even translate?
Exactly. So, in other words, what are the details? So he went through it kind of nicely there. And we started off, again, on the Nefesh HaElokis side. We're discussing what is the full spectrum of Chesed from the standpoint of the Nefesh HaElokis. Right? And so we started off by saying, first of all, Chesed represents love. Right? And love, what's Chesed of Chesed, therefore? It's loving those who love God. Right? All lovers of God, your midah of Chesed is aroused towards them. That's mean Chesed of Chesed. Gevurah of Chesed, we said, was hating those who don't love God. Right? In other words, you have a sort of an anger midah, right? And where does it express itself? Against those who don't love God, because we're in the realm of Chesed right now.
If you have to hate them with love, you can't hate them with hate.
So this is in fact an aspect of loving God, right? If you love something truly, you automatically hate the opposite of it, right? So something where godliness is not revealed in a thing, because you love God, you hate that thing. Like it says by a tzaddik, that the greater the tzaddik, the more they abhor evil. There's no room for it inside of them, because they don't have any aspect of them which is evil, and therefore when they see it, they just reject it, because there's no, why do you accept something that could be opposite from you, right? Because there's an aspect which could be theoretically a positive thing, right? Sometimes you have to accept a person that you don't agree with, but where does it come into? where does it come from that you can accept something which is not, is that you have a little piece of that person inside you. This is where like the concept of Avos Yisrael comes from, right? That no matter how distant the other person's perspective on Torah might be, or life, right? You have a little piece of that inside yourself, so you can relate, right? It's like we said regarding man and woman; they're also opposites. We had a mimer that explained that how in the million years do these opposite beings unite. So we said it's actually interesting that the man comes from Chesed, the woman comes from Gevurah in their essential state. So the way that they unite with each other,
Gevurah, the woman comes from Gevurah?
like her like sort of soul is derived from the sphere of Gevurah.
Gevurah means?
Like might or...
So
might.
She's got the might and we got the love?
Yeah.
The other way around?
You bring out the exact point. Why is it you think it's the other way around?
A bit in there that comes out.
Because in order to relate to the other person, you have to find the part of you who are Chesed, which is Gevurah, and therefore what you express is this might. You're the
Gevurah.
king of the house, but it's really only so that you can relate to this entity who is all Gevurah, right? So that normally the way that you unite with someone who's opposite from you is that you find the opposite of that person in yourself. Because you can't unite with someone that you really have nothing in common with. So it comes out, you have to bring out of yourself the aspect of them which is inside of you, and vice versa. So in this case where you're a godly soul and you're in the realm of Chesed, you really have no room for the opposite of loving God inside of you. Right? It's not there. It's like a tzaddik. Why does a perfect tzaddik hate evil? There's nothing inside of him that's evil where you can relate to what's evil. So he's a complete rejection of it. There's no like feeling for it that he's gonna, okay, there's other midos. Maybe he can have compassion and so forth. We're not talking about that right now. But the idea is that in terms of his midah of loving God, the opposite of loving God is hated. So that's Gevurah of Chesed. What's Tiferes of Chesed? We said that Tiferes means beauty, and it's basically recognizing the beauty of loving God. Wow, I can't believe how a yarmulke and a beard made this person so beautiful, so to speak, in an external way. I can't believe how the performance of mitzvahs made this person's attributes change so dramatically that he's like a mensch. Like you just the beauty of what Torah and mitzvahs and godliness can do to a person. Beauty. Netzach. We're moving too fast?
No, I was going to ask you about evil. If you see a person who is just evil and you hate that evil in them, in essence, they're really a good person smothered with poison. So you also have to love them at the same time. I mean, you see a person acting like a Rasha, it's like there is part of them that's good. So
you'll hate the evil, not the one doing it. Fine. I'm saying I'm not telling.
I'm just saying you don't disregard that.
I'm just explaining to you what Gevurah of Chesed is. I'm not telling you necessarily at this point how to act towards your fellow Jew. This is what meaning hating the opposite of God. That's the animal, the godly soul's response to evil is that not necessarily the evil person you're bringing in person. I never said person. Just the response to evil is that you're hating the evil. That's the response.
But Gevurah is not hate; it's just power.
No, it also could be hate. A total rejection. That's what he says here. He calls it hate. Then there's netzach of chesed, right? Netzach of chesed is the ability to overcome obstacles that are outside of you, which are blocking your Torah mitzvahs. Endurance or victory, really, right? Is that you're willing to fight, and endurance, but you're willing to fight when something stands in the way of your performance of Torah mitzvahs, right? So you love, again, it's stemming from your love of God. You love God so much that if something tries to stop you from loving God, you're going to fight with it. And then Hod is in the similar vein. If the thing which is fighting against you is just overpowering you to the point that it's 1,000,000 to 1, so there's no real chance of so to speak winning that fight. So you turn it inward, the fight. And Hod is the same thing as Netzach. They're basically on the same par, but the difference is that it's an inner fight. You realize that the whole darkness is really because of you. The reason that you can't defeat the darkness outside of you, basically, is because, and it's so overwhelming, is because it's in you. And therefore you turn to the darkness within, and you remove all blockages, just like there's blockages which are coming from outside. These are the blockages which are coming from inside, and you love God so much that you will just sit there and sort of like become like realized inwardly and recognize the godliness inside yourself and remove the blockages from within. So this is basically Hod of Chesed, and then Yeshod of Chesed is basically that Yeshod is connection. So you're going to connect to the thing, the godly thing, like sort of no matter what happens. You're going to just plug yourself in and give yourself over to this thing despite all odds. In other words, you're not even fighting with it anymore. In a certain sense, Netzach and Hod are sort of recognizing the dark side and wanting to overcome them. And working with the darkness and trying to fight with it. Yesod is like basically just overriding that. It's saying, I'm just connecting to the godly thing and I'm going to do it no matter what. Like, I'm not even fighting with anybody. I'm just doing the good. Right? And, okay. We gave different analogies for it last time, but let's just move on because we're trying to sort of also start the mimer. And then Malchus of Chesed is like sort of you won. You've achieved thought, speech, and action of godly expression. In other words, the thoughts, Malchus represents the domination of all the good attributes inside of you, that the love of God is actually expressed in all your garments of thought, speech, and action. You with me? Okay. So then, that's where we got up to. What we're saying now, though, is that the real work of Spheros Omer, that we're counting all these Spheros, the truth is not, what do we need to know about the godly souls, intricate, division. Because really, the godly soul is not the one who needs to do the work.
It's not the problem.
Right? It's not the problem. It's the animal soul is the problem. So, but what I need to know the godly soul's midos for, because the animal soul is going to work on itself, it's going to try to supplement its negative behaviors, which right now we're going to go through all the behaviors on the side of the animal soul. We're going to do the same exact thing, but we're going to do it inside, on the side of the animal soul. In other words, what's Chesed of Chesed, what's Gevurah of Chesed of animalistic traits. And slowly, the work is to try and replace the corrupted version of the interconnected midos with the perfected version of the godly soul. So we do need to know the godly souls, because we're going to try to take every little detail of the animal soul and replace it with what we just discussed. Yeah.
Yeshod of Chesed is a total submission and alignment of the will.
It's a connecting. It's basically like it's joining. Yeshod represents sticking two things together, right? And that's the idea, is that you just bind yourself with the holiness, and you don't even sort of consider the things that are standing in your way, the blockages. Here he says like this: when it comes to Yesod, even though for whatever reasons, right, whatever reasons, it could be something fighting you from without or within. Whatever reasons, you don't have a drive towards Hashem and Torah mitzvahs because of your love of Hashem. It's Chesed. You just join yourself with all your whole soul to that thing anyway. In other words, as I said, it's not really dealing with the problem. It's just like overriding. It's like lechatchila riba. Like, I'm not looking for issues over here to work on. I'm just connecting myself to the good thing. To the fact that you get aroused with a certain teshuka, with a longing for Torah mitzvahs. You just bring it out of yourself, right?
Is Gevurah and Chesed the same as a godly soul and animal soul?
Maybe in some way, but not the way we're talking about it right now, because we're saying that the Gevurah and Chesed are both attributes of the godly soul, and likewise they both are found on the side of the animal soul. It's just that one is holy and one is animalistic. So what we spoke about right now is the corrected and holy nature of those midos. In other words, in this capacity, hating what is not God is also holy, right? So everything we discussed right now is on the side of the godly soul.
If you have a soul separate from a body, and then you have a body, like a gorilla, the soul is trying to control this gorilla and basically tame it and discipline it. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Can it ever achieve it? Because it doesn't seem like it's possible to reset reality and win unless reality is shattered.
How do you get to Carnegie Hall?
I don't know.
Okay. You don't know that joke?
No, I wish I did that.
A guy's driving down, I don't know, looking for Looking for Carnegie Hall. He's in a concert over there. He said, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? The guy says, practice. You gotta practice. If you practice hard enough, Yom Tov, you will make your gorilla into a man.
No, but I'm talking about the purpose of creation.
I also am.
The purpose of creation is also to do that, but at a whole other level, where it's like the gorilla is beyond tame.
No, it's there to be tamed. It's created to be tamed.
Even after Mashiach comes,
Only you have to have practice. Well, who says that that's the... In other words, that's the ultimate reward of the creation. It's not necessarily the ultimate purpose of creation. We're sitting right now in... Get this? The ultimate purpose of creation is before you. In other words, it's not something that we're waiting for. The ultimate purpose of creation is to make your monkey into a man. Practice. In other words, the fact is that one day it'll actually happen. That's the reward of our work. It's not the purpose of creation per se. The purpose of creation is to do the work. It's just to experience the reward. Right? So really, at the moment right now, we still can do the work. This is the purpose of creation. Anyway.
Right. When we win, we're going to look back.
Yeah.
What's the secret to a good joke? Timing.
I'll tell you. The secret to a good mimer is sitting down, looking at your papers, and participation. Okay. Hine ezelu madze asah elokim. So now we're going into the animal soul's domain. So it says in Koheles that Hashem made everything what we call ze lu'umat ze, one force opposing another force. Everything you have in Kedusha, you have in Klippa. Like it says, like a monkey before a man, kukuf bifnei adam, right? That
Where are you?
a monk right at the bottom here, 66. Like a monkey in front of a man, it appears like it looks like a man. You brought the good analogy, right? A monkey basically is pretending to look exactly like a man. Everything Hashem made in the godly world, He made like a counterpart that looks just like it in the animalistic world. Obviously, it's not mamish godly, but it looks godly. It compares itself. So all those same godly midos, they have their monkey version on the side of darkness. Yeah, first line, page 66, the bottom paragraph. Just like in Nefesh Elokis, kol mida kalula mizayin midos, every mida is included with 7 midos. Kein hu gam b'nefesh abamis. So it is with the animal soul. Shekol mida mizayin midos, the nefesh abamis, that every mida of the 7 midos of the animal soul, kalula mikol midos, it's also included with all the other midos, which means Gevurah also has all 7, and Tiferes also has all 7, etc. And let's go through it again. Kamo b'midos ha-chesed al derech mashal. And let's take one midah and thoroughly see it, and then we can sort of try on our own to apply it to the rest of the midos. So just like the midah of chesed, by way of analogy, which we just did in the godly soul, in the inyan chesed shebechesed. So what's chesed shebechesed? This part is like really what we need to know. This is very, very... I hope if you don't have like sort of a visceral reaction to all these different midos of the animal soul, you're a tzaddik. So he says the chesed of the chesed is masha avasol dvarim gashmi. Let's just switch everything. What was the chesed in general of the godly soul? It was love. You had love of God. So the chesed of the animal soul, guess what? You have love for your physicality. You have love for yourself. You still have love, but it's misguided and misdirected love. Instead of loving God, you love stuff. You love kavod. You love basically other things besides God. It's possible. You ever heard of such a thing? Right? So you have a drawing and interest towards things which are not pashat elokus. This is the love of the animal soul. Right? Well, maybe come sit down first. We'll trade.
Yeah, if I'm sitting down, I'm going to be all anxious and I'm going to ask you too many questions.
Oh, okay. So he says, Chesed is on the side of the godly soul is that what you love dvarim gashmi, bal yidei bitoy, and it comes to an expression b'tshuka galoy lagashmias, and it comes to expression with open love for physicality. In other words, you actually just go out there and do it. You love whatever it is, like a good, walk on the beach. You're just like geschmack, the sun, the water, the air on my face. You're not doing it because it's connecting you to God. You're just enjoying the simple, fleshy life, right? So it reveals itself as an open, outright love of physical pleasures. Yes.
It seems like the Goyim have the right to say, that's what I want my life to be about. I want it to be about muscles and physicality pleasures. Now, if that's the case, if they're allowed to do that, then how can we ever win? How can we ever convince them to stop acting like monkeys?
Who said we have to convince them to stop acting like
Who
monkeys?
said it's just the goyim?
There's good monkeys also. In other words, you don't have to stop a monkey from being a monkey. You don't have to stop a non-Jew from being a non-Jew. That's not our job. Our job is to get you to stop acting like a non-Jew, right? That basically we have this job to do. They have 7 mitzvahs, and they also have to be in the throes of the love of God when it comes to doing their mitzvahs.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the best way to
So they're allowed to have a biker gang. I mean, really,
they can have a biker gang as long as they're out doing good deeds. You know what I'm saying? Biker gang as long as it's not transgressing any of the 7 mitzvahs.
So they got it easy. They can be weird. They can have Disney World and all that nonsense. And it's not gonna hurt the world of creation. It's like the world needs nonsense too, and that's why they only have 7 mitzvahs. So we can help them be better at being monkeys.
Nonsensical.
Nonsensical
Yeah,
monkeys.
the point is they have less behavior that they're demanded to control,
That's
right?
Yeah.
So even if they'll perfect themselves, they're not intended to necessarily to perfect themselves into like tzaddikim, pure godly creations in the same way where they don't like have any extension into the physical world. They're expected to curb their passions so that their physical passions, God forbid, do never cross the line of basically crossing their boundaries, which is the 7 mitzvahs. They can't kill, they can't steal, they can't do all the things they can't. So if this is what happens basically, as you're going to see in a minute, if you allow that process to happen, that when you get into your physical passions, it's a slippery slope, right? Because one physical passion leads into the next, into the next, into the next, until you mamish transgress
And then you cut off
things.
your beard.
Chas v'shalom. But yeah, this is what could take place.
Not you or me, but someone.
Anyway, so this is the animal soul's love. It loves physicality. Gevurah shebechesed is already from the is mitzad avaso v'trukaso l'devarim gashmim, is that because of your intense love for physical things, who's sones managid lezeh, you wind up hating anyone who's going to get in your way of those physical things.
Of the
Right?
spiritual things.
Which basically comes from
physical
the
things.
fact that as soon as our Sinai took place in the world, you know the word Sinai comes from the word Sina. Because it says that hatred descended upon the Jewish people from all the world at the time of Har Sinai. Why? Because we're basically coming with the Torah and putting limitations even on the non-Jews, acquisition of their pleasures. It's not our fault. God came with that, right? But basically, it comes with like a bunch of rules and enforcement of these rules, and so anything that's going to stand in the way of me and my gashmias, you're going to hate it because your love of gashmias is what we're talking about right now. We're talking about the mitos of the animal soul. So just like the godly soul, anything which is not godly, you automatically hate. Here, you already see like the evils of the animal soul coming out because this is pashut bad hatred. Anything that you now is going to get in the way of your physical pleasures, which is godliness, you're going to hate it.
No, I don't understand.
So godliness is now going to be the object of your hatred, as opposed to things that oppose godliness on the side of the godly soul, right? Because what's standing in the way of your physical pleasures is basically your moral conscience, right? It's your responsibilities. Otherwise, you just do whatever you want. So if something's going to stand in my way, I'm going to hate that thing. Because my love. We're talking about the midah of love right now. So my love is what's being activated. My love is for Gashmias. So therefore, inside of my love for Gashmias is a hatred for the opposite of Gashmias. It's a part of my love. It's Gevurah shebechesed of the animal soul. We're not talking about pure Gevurah over here. Gevurah is not love. Real Gevurah is you have an aspect of you which is just outright mean, right? And like basically, a hater inside of you. Again, so on the godly soul side, that could be a very positive thing. There's a whole week of working with your sort of like constraints against things that stand in the way of, we didn't talk about it, but there's a holy Gevurah. But the Gevurah of the animal soul, it's by definition is an animalistic Gevurah. So it's a mean guy, right? But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about Chesed. We're talking about the love of the animal soul. But what? The animal soul loves Gashmias. So an aspect of the love of the animal souls for Gashmias is that anything which is blocking its love, it hates.
Yeah.
It's an aspect of love.
moral
To put this in
compass
a
gets in the way.
practical understanding. 'cause
We're trying. Just let that process unfold.
a person
You said,
walking in an
you
analogy,
said-
an analogy.
Hatred descended upon the world when we received the Torah.
Yeah, upon descended upon us from the Goyim
Hatred.
when we received the Torah.
What's the exact definition of Sheba this one? Inside?
Of what? Sheba
Exact translation?
that's
Inside?
inside of.
Right.
So it's Gevurah inside of Chesed. So really it's Chesed.
Right.
Because we're the whole week of the first week is a Chesed week, right? But that's what we're trying to understand right now. There's inter-inclusion of other midas inside of this midah. So for example, you want an analogy, let's say, again, like, if you stop your kid from eating too many cookies, right? It's not because you hate him, it's because you love him. It's an act of love, right? Because you don't want him to hurt himself, basically. So it's really because you love your kids,
Restraint and
you
love,
sometimes show restraints.
Right.
So here's
You're giving him gashmias because you're using love
No,
properly.
it's opposite.
What's
Teaching them
gashmias
discipline.
mean?
physicality.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If I'm walking by a pork chop sandwich store and I say no to myself, that my body wants that because it smells good, then I'm using gashmias. I'm using gashmias to give him love. I'm saying,
But you switch tracks. All of a sudden, you're on the side of the godly soul again. If you're
That's
going
where I've lost you.
right, I see that.
Why would we be on the other side?
Because we're discussing both the attributes of the godly soul, and then now we're in the process of discussing the attributes of the animal soul. The difference is what is the love? They both have love, but what is the love directed towards? The godly soul's love is directed towards God and mitzvahs. So therefore, since you love holiness and mitzvahs, when you pass this unkosher store, so you hate going in there, it's because really you love God,
Okay.
right? So therefore you hate the opposite of godliness.
Right.
But on the side of the animal soul, you love yourself. You love physicality. So
Love the
therefore,
smell.
what do you hate? You hate anything that's going to stand in the way of your physicality.
Godliness.
Exactly. So you wind up hating godliness.
But how do you prevent yourself from hating?
All right, we'll come sit down. We'll talk about it. So anyway, the idea is that we're out of time, unfortunately. Okay, but so we'll pick up this tomorrow.
It's going to go through all the
Yeah.
weeks.
Not all the weeks, just Chesed. Just Chesed.
Can we start the class at 6:30 and have 2 hours?
Yeah.
It'd be
Yeah.
a great book.
We could.
It'd be a great teaching.
I'm
to
into
go
it.
through all
Okay.
Yeah, we have to. Yeah, it would be great.
There's
possible?
something that
It's
has that?
there is something, but not like the way the Rebbe does it. It's pretty much amazing.
gets light
You're gonna
very
save
early.
that, David, for tomorrow? Your
Sorry?
copy?
Yeah.
You're gonna hold on to your copy for tomorrow, or you want to give? You didn't have a
Yeah.
copy.
Okay.
I might have one in my room.
Freddie was
Oh,
already.
I didn't give you one today.
Your own.
No.
Can we come at
Okay.
6:30?
All right.
Is that too early?
My
I'm
animal,
gonna
my
start the
animal
class
soul.
earlier.
Okay, do you want to hold on to this, or I'll take
Come
it?
here
Do you want to
earlier?
take
You
it?
still do that?
I didn't make any
Unless you're gonna bring it back tomorrow, or Sunday now.
6:30.
Because I don't want to make any more copies.
Okay.
So if you bring it back, you can hold on to it in the meantime, or I can hold it for you.
Do you want to hold on to one? Is that-
No, I want to hold on to all of them so that they don't get lost. We don't have to keep making
Do
copies.
you want me to hold on to all of them? Is that it?
No.
I'm asking you that if I give this to you, you're going to bring it back on Sunday? All right, so bring it back on Sunday. But I'm just going to keep it because you might
Rabbi
forget.
Chesed,
No, I won't forget.
You won't forget? All right.